welcome to Aspiring Something TV. This month is Autism Acceptance Month, so this segment is extra special to me. 2 years ago, I discovered that I was on the spectrum. In grade school, I was diagnosed with auditory processing disorder, and then later on, I was diagnosed with ADHD. 2 years ago, when I did find out I was on the spectrum, I finally felt that I understood why I felt so different. I soon came across a TikToker named Actually Alex, and not to be dramatic or anything, but her TikToks changed my life. I started to binge all of her TikToks, and I felt like I could identify with someone who was a female with autism who had adapted to her life by masking. So today, I'm happy to have Alex here on Aspiring Something TV. Alex is a psych practitioner, professional TikToker, and an autistic female who uses her platform to teach about the very misunderstood topic, autism and neurodivergence. Thank you so much for joining us today, Alex.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. And just to expand on something you just said, actually, I, just like you, was also diagnosed ADHD and the sensory processing disorder, SPD. So this is what's so common for us, right? Is we have this combination of like the sensory difference and the ADHD, which has so many overlaps now with autism. And I do want to say something really quickly that I've been hearing about is that it's likely that they're going to combine ADHD into the autism spectrum just because it is so similar. So, you know, it's just like ADHD, just like autism, it's a neurological difference. And I just, I wanted to mention that because we have very similar stories. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah. And I was telling you earlier that even though we've talked on the phone briefly, but I feel like I know you because I've watched all your TikToks. And so you just recently also found out that you were on the spectrum. What was the most shocking thing for you to find out?
Yeah. So I would say for my whole life, I felt like the way I experienced the world was normal, that everybody was overcalculating everything about their environment, that everybody was just as overstimulated. I found that when I was little, I had to take a lot of naps. Like I would shut down a lot, or I would have, meltdowns and things like that. I just had all these differences in the way that I responded to the world. And I was like, what could this possibly be? And why are things so much more challenging for me? What is the reasoning behind this? And so getting a diagnosis of autism made it really clear to me that I had to learn how to accommodate myself, like that I had to learn that I don't have the same brain as everybody else. And that's okay. It means that I have to be extra cognizant of my energy levels and how they're changing. That makes sense, right? Because that's why we can see, hear, feel, touch everything at the same volume all the time. Other people have the ability to focus in and filter out most of these extraneous things in their life. Like they're not nearly as affected by noise or by sound or by overanalyzing conversation, even because they're simplifying all these things about their life naturally. So that really, wow, what an important thing to understand about my brain, right? Because how could I expect myself to operate as a neurotypical now knowing that I quite literally have a very different brain and experience? I think that was really very shocking to learn.
Yeah, wow. And validating. I used to think that I had a personality disorder because my mood and personality would switch so drastically from my environment. Like if I was in a bright coffee shop that was like literally too much jarring music, I couldn't hold a conversation. Whereas if I was in the comfort of a friend's home with like more dim lighting and my comfortable clothes, like I could just talk just because the environment was more comfortable to my sensory input.
Yes, beautifully put. And also like, that's so important to know about autism, that like our experiences are so environmentally dependent. And that's where really the social model approach is going to change. Is changing the world because people are recognizing environments are disabling, right? Environments are what are disabling. And it's not the autistic person that's the problem or the autistic person's experience that they're at fault for. It's the environment that is causing some of these challenges that we're having, and it's the environment that needs to be paid attention to, and so that we don't feel like it's us and that we're the problem. It's more of, what are the kinds of spaces that I can find or that I can be in? What are the kinds of relationships that are validating? Because we've been continuously, if we don't know we're autistic, we've been continuously putting ourselves in invalidating spaces, because we just felt like we were supposed to grin and bear it just like everyone else. And I think that's a big expectation shift that we go through, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that leads right into grin and bearing it and using the survival tactic of masking, which you talk a lot about on your channel, and which I identified with, because a lot of people, or even me, that's why I thought I had a personality disorder, because I'm like, well, why sometimes can I just talk, and then others I feel like I don't want to talk, I can't talk, like no words can come out. And so can you explain a little bit about masking and also the dissociative anxiety?
Yeah, for sure. So masking is one of the 3 variables as a part, or that is part of the larger term camouflaging. And so camouflaging is this combined of these 3 variables: masking, assimilation, and compensation. And so what masking is it is literally taking on the traits of others and applying them to yourself. And it is this idea of feeling very performative in the situations, feeling like you're having to overly plan your approach, feeling like you're learning your socialization based on intense observation versus it coming naturally. So these are some of the things that make up masking. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where we have different masks, or we learn different masks for different situations. And that's, what's really interesting is I think for autistic people, it's been traditionally, I guess this idea has been traditionally perpetuated that autistic people have interests in just objects or science-based topics or things like that. And so I think what has really changed in the last 10 years is this idea that, it really has to do with the interest base, the interest, like what is the interest, and following the interest. Because autistic people, if they have an interest in socialization, if they have an interest in people, and if that becomes an obsession, that can be a special interest. It doesn't necessarily have to be, I read this book series over and over. It could be, I work as hard as I can to figure out how to socialize and what to do and what to say and how to be around people. And that is what I care about. Like, that's really what has been my survival tactic. So that's what masking is. And then compensation is things like forcing ourselves to do things we don't want to do. So forcing ourselves to be in those environments that are really loud, and forcing ourselves to make eye contact or hold it for a prolonged period. It's kind of speaking to more of the manual pieces of what we're doing. It's not automatic. Mm-hmm. And then we have assimilation, which again is sort of similar. These are all a little bit similar, but there's still a few distinguishing features. But assimilation is, okay, so it looks like everybody in this room is going and sitting in the same desks every day. I'm just going to do what everybody else is doing. It's kind of this intense observation of like, what are people doing in here and what am I supposed to do? And what I'm like, I don't know. It's just sort of like, again, it's like picking something that other people are doing, really assimilate, like just trying to be part of that crowd but it's not like a natural thing that like you just know what to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Can you identify when you were masking back then? Like when you were a kid, could you tell when you were, or were you more nonverbal as a kid?
Yeah, so what's really interesting is I have and this is something that's pretty common with autistic girls, is we can be overly social in an attempt to engage. So trying a lot, talking a lot. And it's one of those things where it might not always be hitting, or, instead of kind of shying away from social relationships, like over engaging. So that was my experience, was that I was over engaging and I was trying to do what I could, but I felt like I was masking a lot when I was trying to figure out how to be around girls. I think that was really difficult for me when I was little, is I didn't really understand how to play with girls or what to do, or what to talk about, or I didn't really have much to contribute to those conversations. And that was really stressful for me. Mm-hmm. And so as my coping strategy, I turned to sports, and I turned to, okay, what kind of games can I play? And I think that's something that can really help autistic people, is like basing our friendships around activity. I was very lucky to have a best friend growing up that was neurodiverse. And I knew that I didn't have to mask around this friend. Like with this friend, there was no sense of, okay, I have to change the way I'm talking, or I have to monitor myself. Like, I think there's this intense self-monitoring that happens where you feel very like detached from yourself a little bit when you're masking. Like you're just sort of, and this is sort of where the dissociation comes in, because it is a trauma response. It is just doing your best to try and to assimilate. But with those neurodivergent friends, you find that you can just be yourself, and you can just play games, and you don't have to keep up conversation, and you don't have to, I think what's really difficult is like trying to keep a conversation rolling, especially if you just don't have anything to add, or you don't have any interest in anything the person is saying. It can be extraordinarily difficult. Yeah. And so I think finding that neurodivergent friend when I was little was a saving grace for me.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I was such a tomboy, and even today I struggle with, I have a few neurodivergent friends, but just with some friends, it's hard talking about other people or talking about what's going on with pop culture. Like my mind just doesn't work that way. And I tried so hard for so long to contribute to those conversations, but it was draining. Going back to what you were saying, I remember distinctly when I was like 4 or 5, my mom, we were at church, and this man, he said hi to me. He said, "Hi, Lindsay." And I didn't want to say hi. I didn't want to make eye contact. And it was painful. And so my mom made me write an apology and make eye contact with him and say hi the next time I saw him at church. Wow. And it makes me emotional thinking about it. But since then, I feel like I've used dissociative anxiety as a coping mechanism, because I learned that it's not okay to be nonverbal and just to not trust your own internal instincts when you don't feel comfortable to speak. When you brought up this dissociative anxiety, I finally was like, wow, because there's so many conversations that like I literally black out, and it's been like a survival tactic for me. And so I guess I just want to ask, like, for other people and myself, like, what are ways to be more present and to not use that as a tactic and be more genuine and authentic in a world that oftentimes thinks eye contact and not saying hi is rude?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm feeling so deeply with you right now, because I think that concept of just blacking out and just applying the social things that you've measured to work, I think it makes us feel so far away from ourselves. It makes us feel like we're abandoning ourselves. It is abandoning ourselves. And I think before we know we're autistic, and before we know what our trauma responses are, why they're happening, we are just flailing. I mean, we are ungrounded, right? We're very ungrounded. And I think part of what we can do is we can shift those expectations of ourselves. And so I've really started to kind of pick me over those expectations, right? Picking me. So doing less things in person, finding friendships that are mostly textually based. I think my most adoring friendships now are mostly text-based. And then we're avoiding kind of some of those situations where we're having to do the in-person niceties and things like that. We don't have to do those things. That's not something we have to do. And that's not something we have to necessarily participate in. We need relationships that have less pressure. We've been putting ourselves under so much pressure for so long to be neurotypical and to assimilate and to fit in. And it's not good for our soul. And it's something that really will just continue to drive us into burnout over and over again if we don't decide, hey, those are some really arbitrary expectations of how to be human and how to interact. I reject those things now. I reject those things now, and I pick myself and I pick my community. I think that also just like taking some time to really build a nurturing relationship with yourself is so important, because I think for so long we've identified with other people thinking we were good enough to pass the social interaction as a measure of if we're good enough or not, right? I think that is what is so hard about this, is if we have people as a special interest, if we have perfecting socialization as a special interest, where do we get to exist in that equation? So, where do we exist? And, I think one of the ways you can start to build some safety with yourself is to create like a really beautiful, like sensory routine or ritual with yourself. Like I do. So I had some notes in here about how I think, one of your questions was, how do we share with people that we've learned these strategies? And so instead of like engaging in events that are all socialization, like going to a dinner and talking, maybe suggesting like, can we go bowling, or can we do a puzzle together, or can we watch a movie together? Like just taking the pressure off of socialization is so important for us, because it's really not worth it to put ourselves through that extreme anxiety and that extreme disassociation to force ourselves to go through a purely conversational based event. It's just way too stressful. And so asking, right? So it's one of those things where if we're holding all of this inside, then nobody that loves us is even able to support us, because we haven't been able to share, we haven't been able to name our differences, right? So I think sharing that, like, the ways that people are normally conversing and the normal rules of conversation just don't come naturally to me, and they're very distressing for me. Kind of coming up with some scripts around how to talk to our family members about that, how to share those things with people. And again, like pouring into yourself and finding out what are the things that actually make me feel social, because they might not be the neurotypical social things, right? Neurotypicals love to hang out with each other lots and lots and lots. I find that with my friends, I can hang out with them once every couple of months and I still feel close to them, feel very close to them, because I hold all of these people and these memories in my head, and I feel like I can still access them. And that's so different about us, right? Like, I feel like another way I can socialize is to listen to podcasts with people that I really like. I don't have to participate in that conversation, but I can feel like I'm a part of it, right? I think that there's just kind of different ways that we can participate socially that look totally different than what neurotypicals do. And delighting in those things is what's so important,
Yeah, so true. And how was that transition for you from finding out you were, autistic, and then having friends that you used to mask with? How have you brought that up to them? Do you still hang out with them, but assimilate, like you said, doing something like bowling? Or how do you go about with relationships and having them respect your boundaries?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, like, I am no longer just like going and meeting people for lunch or going and hanging out at group events. I'm doing one-on-ones now. So I just have one-on-one friendships and we're doing something together. So something that I love too is like, I love to offer up things like, one of my friends loves when I come help her, like with organizing her closet or with organizing her makeup or with doing a makeover together or something like that, so having like self-care time together. I keep those friendships close when I'm able to talk to, like, those are also the friends that I'm able to share, like, I'm autistic and like a lot of things stress me out and it may have not seemed like it, but this is the case. And, you know, there have been some people that maybe just don't really understand it and don't really know how to be my friend now. But in that case, you know, it's one of those things where like we're always shedding throughout life anyways. We're shedding, and relationships, all of the relationships you ever had aren't necessarily meant to last forever. But I find that like offering something to my friends, like I said, like, do you need any help with something? Like, or do you have a project you're working on? Or do you want to go for a walk in the park? Or, you know, something where there's just way less pressure and we can focus on something else together. That's my coping skill, because really, I just don't want to go to parties. I don't want to be around a lot of people. So that's kind of the self-accommodation that we can do that can make us feel included and like we're part of something, but that there isn't so much pressure on like just talking and building a relationship that way.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I find that when I have a relationship that we can just go on a walk and have like a deep talk about one of our special interests, it's like it fills me up and it energizes me. But when I go to a party and it's so draining. So
exactly.
I also want to know, what is your biggest blessing that you think autism has brought you? I know we've talked about, you know, the sensory things, which can sometimes seem like a pain, but sometimes I think it's kind of cool that we can feel everything heightened. But what do you think the biggest blessing is?
Oh my gosh. I think that we have this blessing of having non-superficial relationships. I think that a lot of people, like sometimes when I'm observing neurotypicals and their interaction, it doesn't seem like there's really a depth to the conversation. There's not like how I'm feeling, what I've experienced, what are the stories of my life. I find that I love to learn people's stories. Like I want to know what they've been through. I want to know about their life. I want to know about their relationship. I want them to share things about themselves. And I find that we can create such strong bonds with people because of our authenticity and because we don't want to just small talk, you know? I think that that's something really beautiful about us, is that we want to talk about something real or something interesting or something fascinating. We just kind of have these really beautiful interests in these things that we love. And it's just really exciting to know that like we can lean more into that and we can design more relationships around that, because I think for so long we force ourselves to, you know, hang out with neurotypical people, be around neurotypical people. And sometimes we can, as we kind of learn to express our autisticness more on the outside, some of those relationships can grow a depth for those people that they haven't experienced before in a friendship. And like, I think everybody needs an autistic friend. So it's like one of those things where like, you know, you can kind of get neurotypicals to explore themselves a little bit more and introspect a little bit more when they have autistic friends, because we really do care. I think that's really beautiful about us. I also think that, again, like you kind of spoke to this, but I think the immersive senses we have, right? Like the amount that I enjoy my favorite snacks, like the amount that I enjoy my favorite smells, the amount that I enjoy my baths, you know, it's like a mystical, magical experience to me to like be able to engage my senses. And I think that that is something that a lot of people, like just don't get to experience the world in the way we do. And I think it's so beautiful that we're able to feel so much.
Yeah, I have auditory tactile synesthesia, so I like feel sounds, which sometimes can be painful, but if I hear a song that I love, like my whole body just feels like it's floating, and it literally feels like I'm on drugs.
It does. It feels amazing. It feels, especially when you find that new favorite song, like, oh my gosh, play it over and over and over again. Like, I just love it. I want to hear it over and over. It's playing in my head. Like, yeah, no, it's
and I saw that you like I saw that you like Leon Bridges. I love Leon Bridges. He's coming to the Santa Barbara Bowl in the fall, and I'm hoping to go see him. Have you seen him live?
I have not, but that would be amazing. My partner's, I forget exactly who it is, but he has a friend who is like really close friends with Leon Bridges, and he just like comes over to their house, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, could you imagine just hanging out with him?
Yeah,
I know.
just a little jam sesh.
Yes,
that's so
exactly.
Cool.
So cool.
It really is. So this is Autism Awareness Month, Autism Acceptance Month. What is it exactly? Because I've heard both Autism Awareness and Autism Acceptance Month.
So I think we're trying to move towards the acceptance.
Okay.
It's always been called Autism Awareness Month, but I'm also seeing that some companies are shifting to talk about Neurodiversity Acceptance Month. So we're kind of broadening. Yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, I would say acceptance.
Okay. So Autism Acceptance Month. And so you do one-on-one coaching, but you also do these presentations within businesses and stuff. And you were telling me a little bit earlier how you're kind of trying to help bring a humanness to autism. So do you mind sharing a bit about what you were telling me earlier?
Of course. So there's a couple of things that I want to cover here, just kind of overall. One is that for so long, people who are invisibly disabled haven't been understood in the workplace. They really still aren't. A lot of the times people who are invisibly disabled do not know that they can have accommodation because they don't have a physical visual disability, but this is not the case. And so part of what I'm doing in my educating is talking about, autism, ADHD, anxiety, PTSD, mental health conditions, all of these things all count as neurodivergence. And a lot of the times we're having similar struggles in terms of, our sensory environment or our, the way that instruction is given to us and the way that expectations are laid out to us can be very confusing. A lot of workplaces can be very ambiguous. And so we end up spending all of our time stressed about what are the expectations, when is it due, how much am I supposed to do, how do we break this into smaller pieces. We're spending so much of our time distressed when we really have access to these accommodations where our managers can help create these better environments for us where we're able to do our work and not feel so anxious all the time. And so I'm doing this work to try and educate both managers and employees about what are some accommodations that we can ask for? And I also speak specifically to why autism is stigmatized and kind of what our specific autism needs are in the workplace. And people, I've found through these presentations that a lot of managers, executives, and neurotypicals alike say, I think really we should design an environment that includes all of that for everybody, right? So we're actually kind of learning that a lot of what are disability accommodations for people who are invisibly disabled are things that would help neurotypicals perform better at work too. And so it's really, really exciting that businesses are much more open to, building accommodating environments and to supporting their employees more holistically and ensuring that, when they log off for the day, they're not drowning in stress, because that's not what we want. Totally. So that's what I've been doing there. And with the one-on-one coaching, I've been working with often really high masking, late diagnosed, or had just been diagnosed, or are on the path to diagnosis. And we're just discussing and sharing lived experience. We're talking about strategies for unmasking, like how we can build our sensory diets, how we can address.
We'll call with you.
Absolutely. How we can how we can design a life more around our needs, and kind of sometimes it takes somebody else telling you and affirming for you what your needs are for you to go take an action for yourself. yeah, I
So
think
it's so inspiring to see that you just got diagnosed and you're such a pioneer and an advocate in working, going to schools and helping, and sorry, going to schools and workplaces and helping facilitate just this inclusivity and also just awareness, because a lot of people aren't aware. I know, like, we're probably about the same age. Growing up, we were misdiagnosed or not diagnosed, and so that
yeah.
the fact that people have someone like you who are bringing such awareness to the masses, I'm just so grateful for you. And I kind of, to backtrack, I want to know what kind of sparked you knowing that you were going to be an educator and create a TikTok to bring awareness to this.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was kind of a crazy experience. So a couple of years ago, I started working for a neurodiversity consulting firm. Before that, I had always worked with autistic kids or in the autistic community in some way, and just felt such a love and a passion for the kids I was working with. And, I felt so much like these people. Like, I couldn't describe why, but I just felt such a connection. And so I just, I've kind of been somebody who I pick a thing and I just like make that my vision and I just go as hard as I can at it. Maybe that's part of my autism, but I just get really fixated on something. And working in the neurodiversity space was really important to me because I wanted to learn how we could create better, opportunities for neurodivergent people at work. And through this journey, like through this work with this firm, I learned so much about environmental design and about accommodation and about, humanizing autism. And I made the TikTok just to educate about neurodiversity at work, but then I made a video about autism and women being late diagnosed, and people were messaging me and asking, where can I test myself? Like, where do I test? Like, how do I know? And I found a test and I took it, and I made a TikTok of this situation actually, where I took it and I was like, oh, I guess I'm autistic. And that was like the first step in the journey to diagnosis, was actually on TikTok. So TikTok has unfolded my entire story for the past 2 years. And I guess it just sort of felt like, this was such an up and coming area where for so long autistic people haven't really been able to connect directly with each other or talk to each other. And that's because, we're a little bit more introverted. We're not wanting to go to these big rallies in the streets or go to these big conferences and talk to each other. We want to be able to connect with each other like in a more comfortable way. And so I found that, TikTok has really created so much opportunity for disability communities to come together and advocate together, because we can share story and we can focus on, specific singular topics. We can feel so seen in these ways that we haven't been able to feel seen before. And so I just sort of took that as a sign in terms of, wow, there really needs to be more conversations about this. And I don't know, I just sort of did it. I don't know.
Sounds like it kind of organically just unfolded, which is so beautiful.
It really, yeah.
But I will say that doesn't always happen for everyone. So for everyone listening, I want to see what advice you would give to an autistic person that maybe just found out or doesn't feel like they fit in or know their purpose in the world, or someone with ADHD, someone neurodivergent that just doesn't feel like they fit into society.
Yeah, so I have a couple of bullets here. We've kind of gone over some of these things already, but I want to kind of reiterate because I think there's a couple of things. So one, we must choose us. We must choose us. We can't continue to abandon ourselves because we want to fit in the ways that we thought we were supposed to fit in, right? So rejecting those barriers to acceptance starts with picking us and designing a new life. Right. So I think there's this shedding process that we go through in terms of what is my autistic identity? How do I shed my past identity? I think it's such a process that has ebbs and flows. But I would say, like, find your unique corners of the world, find those community spaces. Like, you know, people can join the Autism Unmasked Discord server if they want to go in there, and you can meet people in there. There's literally thousands of people that have shared their entire story in the My Story section. You can go in there and you can find somebody whose story you relate to and DM them and say, I relate to you, you know, like, we're so similar. I think there's more spaces now where there are more people like us talking about ourselves, and to go and search out those spaces, find spaces where we do fit, you know, instead of pushing ourselves into things where we don't fit. We need to create these new realities.
Yes.
For ourselves, right? So finding these new communities, creating these new realities, different brands of socialization and connection. So we just have a different brand of it. And like I said a little bit earlier, sometimes I feel so connected just reading comments. I feel so seen, and I feel like I can have a little conversation in my head with the person that's commenting or something like that. I mean, I find that there's just different ways we can feel like we're being social and interacting, and we can kind of just feel like, you know, good about it. I mean, what does it matter? I think there's this whole, like, there's this big opportunity we have to just kind of like poo away all of those silly expectations we had about ourselves in terms of being a perfect neurotypical, and work more diligently to figure out some different ways that we can connect to people that may be totally different, or different ways we can connect to ourselves. So like I said, what feels social to me is reading comments, listening to podcasts, engaging in my interests, reading books, watching movies, feeling like I understand the character, you know. I think that it's just, we have different ways of socializing and connecting, and it doesn't have to look like what you thought it had to look like. I think that's one of the biggest barriers to get past.
Yes. So good. Okay, well, we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you, so in this season of life, if you could define your life as aspiring something, what would it be for this season of life?
For me, I would say I'm aspiring better health choices. So I have found that, you know, I get into these periods where I kind of get good at taking care of myself, and then I kind of slip into these burnouts and things like that just happens for us. And today was the first day in a while that I got up, got out of my apartment, grabbed my yoga mat, and I went and explored my new apartment complex and found a spot under a tree to do some yoga.
Oh,
and
that's so nice.
And I played some music, and I brought a book out there with me, and I felt like this is something that has to be a regular occurrence. This can't be just sometimes that I'm doing this when I'm feeling really stressed or overwhelmed. So I'm aspiring consistent health this season for myself. What about you?
Which can be hard for us with executive functioning, because I'm the same way. It's like you get on track, and then meal prepping helps though. Meal prepping does help, because sometimes it's like I'm cooking something and I'll skip all the steps, and then I'm like, ew, what did I just create? This is disgusting.
Oh, I know. I make stuff that tastes so bad. I'm very lucky that I have my boyfriend that's the cook of the family. So
lucky.
Yes. Yeah. I'm very, very grateful for that. But otherwise, yeah, I cannot. I mean, it's ramen or what? Like, I don't know, water for dinner.
Yeah, right. Maybe a pack of tuna.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, it was so great to talk to you, and thank you for helping to spread autism acceptance and for all that you do as a pioneer in the autism world. And where can people follow you and learn more?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your sweet words. So my TikTok is @actually with 3 underscores Alex. So you can follow me there. I'm still working on my Patreon structure and trying to figure out how that's going to work. But as of right now, I have some podcasts on there. I have some really great stuff, some great materials, and some personal stories and experiences about the overlap between autism and PTSD and some stuff like that. So if you're looking for some blogs to read or some podcasts to listen to, feel free to sign up for my Patreon, and that is patreon.com/actuallyalex.
Amazing. Well, have a good rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thank you, Lindsay. It was so